2024 was full of disappointments and failures. Even though there were plenty of bright spots, the depths to which some of Hollywood's latest efforts descended were so dank and odoriferous, special gear was required to view them. From bloated sequels to dumpster fire reboots, it's a lineup that proves some studios still haven't learned their lessons. I'll be covering both TV series and movies primarily in genre entertainment, meaning sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and some action flicks. Basically what I cover on the channel. And I'll also only be talking about things I've actually seen. If I haven't included a particularly egregious example in my list, there's probably a good chance it's because I didn't see it. So buckle up, because this is the top 10 stinkers of 2024.
10.
You have no idea what you're getting yourself into here.
Stephen King adaptations are notorious for missing the tone and nuance of the novels, and Salem's Lot, which managed to drain the life out of one of horror's most iconic tales, is no different. The pacing was an absolute slog, stretching the story that thrives on tension and dread into a meandering mess. The cast, led by Lewis Pullman as Ben Mears, gave performances that ranged from wooden to outright bizarre, as if they'd wandered in from different movies. The cinematography lacked any sense of atmosphere, with flat lighting that made the titular town feel like a poorly dressed set, and the final sequence was laughably bad, turning what should have been a tense moment of survival into a farcical mess. Let's just say the vampires were scarier in the 1979 miniseries. I know there were probably worse horror movies out last year, but I skipped the obvious crap like Night Swim and Tarot, and my love for Stephen King's writing, not his political drivel, but his excellent books, meant that this one hurt more.
9.
Mrs. Chess!
How do you mess up a Venom movie? Well, you add in musical numbers, limit the killer alien who likes eating people's brains so that the funnest part of the film is entirely neutered, add in some questionable side characters with little to no development, make the villain a shadowy figure sitting in his chair for the whole runtime, and ask a first-time director to steer the sloppy mess.
And let me also stress that this is her first movie.
I know.
Ever.
Tom Hardy gives it his all, but even his raw charisma can't save the cringeworthy script. The CGI feels overdone, even for a Venom film, and fighting waves of what are essentially henchmen gets old real quick. Toss on a heap of asinine story beats, and by the end, even the symbiote seemed like it wanted to leave.
8.
Охотник до сказки.
Каждой сказки есть правда.
Sony's latest attempt at milking Spider-Man's rogues gallery was like watching a taxidermy display come to life. This movie is the definition of flat. Not even Aaron Taylor Johnson could save this mediocre misfire. The script turned this feral villain into a preachy environmentalist anti-hero with daddy issues, fighting poachers. Most of the acting ranged from bizarre to terrible to simply phoning it in. Too much time was spent on Kraven's backstory, and the movie drags on for far too long, without managing to endear any of the characters to the audience. And the Rhino, as the main antagonist, is just awful. Whether it's the acting or direction, I don't know. It was cool to see a take on a metaphysical rhino, but it ended up feeling ridiculous and just off. The action scenes, which should have been raw and visceral, were edited into an incomprehensible jumble, and the CGI animals looked like they'd been ripped from a late 2000s video game. If I wanted to watch a movie about a guy who can communicate with animals and fight incompetent henchmen, I'd just watch Beastmaster.
He was lord and master over all beasts. He was the Beast Master.
7.
Would you look at that? A ladder! Unfortunately, my design doesn't facilitate this type of...
How do you take a beloved video game and strip away everything that made it fun? Ask Eli Roth. Cate Blanchett's Lilith feels completely out of place as a geriatric version of her video game counterpart. Delivering a performance so forced and lifeless, you're left wondering what enticed her to take this role in the first place. I doubt she needs the money. Kevin Hart as Roland? Well, he's probably the least miscast, and that's saying a lot. The venerable Jamie Lee Curtis certainly isn't enough to save this film from Jack Black's incessant drivel that's supposed to stand in for humor.
I'm expelling the excess lead. I can't go if you're looking at me. Actually, scrap that.
On the contrary, she feels the most out of place of them all, and only helps to drag the entire thing down. The irreverent humor and anarchic energy of the games are nowhere to be found, replaced by generic action sequences and dialogue that sounds like it was written by someone who'd only read the game's Wikipedia page. The CGI looks generic, and the sets often look unfinished, leaving fans longing for the chaotic charm of the source material.
6.
You know the butcher? The freaking nut job that goes around just chopping people up? Well, the feds or whatever heard that he's gonna be here today, so they set up a trap for him.
This one is a mystery, because no one knows why it exists. A self-serious thriller that tries to be clever but ends up feeling like a brainless, blatant exercise in Hollywood nepotism. The cast, led by a bizarrely awkward Josh Hartnett, struggles with a script that's more focused on convoluted twists than creating any real tension. The core concept is idiotic from the start, and riddled with more holes than my gaming underwear. And M. Night Shyamalan's ever-increasing disregard for integrity is on display, front and center, with the inclusion of his daughter, Salika Shyamalan, as the movie's Taylor Swift-like character called Lady Raven. She's an alright singer, but she can't act for shit. Her performance and emoting is on par with the best Amanda Stenberg or Morfydd Clark can muster.
Cooper, you listen to me now. Enough of this foolishness.
And the increasingly larger role she plays the longer the movie goes on for is painful to watch. By the end, the only trap here was the audience paying for tickets.
Wasted space, I always thought.
5.
I got the sneaking suspicion that we're not giving the people what they want.
Truer words have never been spoken. Turning the gritty psychological character exploration that was Joker into a wannabe musical was a bold choice, and a disastrous one. This was such a disappointment. Joker Folie Deux was a complete departure from everything that made the first movie so riveting and memorable, and that it seemed to be made with the intention of deconstructing Arthur Fleck and his Joker persona because people apparently liked the first one for the wrong reasons, according to some Hollywood weirdos, made it that much worse.
I think what happened after the first Joker was there was a lot of talk ooh, this was loved by incels. This was loved by the wrong kinds of people, and this sent the wrong kinds of male rage, nihilism, all these think pieces.
Right.
The knee-jerk response did nothing more than kill off the legacy of one of DC's best movies to date. Lady Gaga was fine, acting-wise, Joaquin Phoenix was still brilliant, and the supporting characters were all really good, but even their talent couldn't save this disjointed, self-indulgent sequel. The musical numbers, while technically well staged, felt shoehorned in and completely undermined the story's emotional weight. Some people tried to make the argument for some deeper artistic vision going on, but I hate to tell you that the movie just sucked. It was an insult on every level, and a total financial failure. As the Joker himself says,
Get what you fucking deserve!
4.
Amazon's billion-dollar behemoth managed to make Middle-earth feel as empty as a theme park after closing time. Morfydd Clark's Galadriel continues to be a character so insufferable, she makes Sauron seem like an alright guy.
The door is still open.
The door is shut.
The subplots dragged endlessly, with side characters who had the charisma of wet bread. Even the stunning visuals couldn't save it from feeling like a fan-fiction fever dream. The CGI, while technically impressive, lacked the soul that made Peter Jackson's films iconic. The utter disregard for Tolkien's lore, the poor directorial and storytelling choices, and the misrepresentation of beloved characters that were done so much better in other versions, be it in literary, animated, or live-action forms, just highlight the incompetence of the showrunners in their misguided quest to destroy the defining fantasy IP upon which every other fantasy property is built on. It's a desecration of something sacred in the name of modernity and wokeness, and it's terrible to see. Tolkien's legacy deserves respect, not whatever this is. And sadly, Amazon shows no sign of easing up on the poor professor's magnum opus. I have reviews of all the episodes in Season 2 on the channel, so check them out if you're interested.
3.
Oh boy, Sony strikes again. Madam Web somehow made a superhero movie feel like a CW pilot that got scrapped midway through. Everything feels cheap in this one. Dakota Johnson's lifeless performance as the titular psychic is only outdone by the cringeworthy overacting by the fighter teens, who never actually show up in their uniforms in the movie outside of a vision. Sure, Johnson got ahead of the blowback by firing her agent before the film actually released, but let's be real, her acting in this piece of trash is nothing to write home about, and her performance did nothing to elevate any aspect of this train wreck. Quite the opposite.
Oh, that's That's really funny. You're such a funny guy. Are you pressing the burgers?
The pacing is as atrocious as the acting, and the plot gets tripped up in its own tangled web of nonsense. The CGI set pieces look like they're rendered on a PlayStation 3, making the action sequences laughably bad. And the antagonist is pretty dire too, with his lips not syncing with the dialogue half the time for some reason.
I will find them and kill them first. I will find them and kill them first.
It's like Sony's allergic to making good Spider-Man spin-offs. This should be avoided at all costs. It's definitely the worst one of Sony's Spider-Verse.
2.
What's the first thing you liked about me?
I thought that you were quite brilliantly broken.
Remaking a cult classic is always risky, but this one? Ouch. The Crow is an emotionless cash grab that strips away everything that made the original special. Bill Skarsgård tries his best to channel the tragic intensity of Brandon Lee, but the lifeless script gives him nothing to work with. The gothic charm? Gone. The haunting atmosphere? Replaced with generic cityscapes. Even the fight scenes, which should have been raw and impactful, feel absolutely meaningless, as Eric takes on waves of henchmen with no connection to his and Shelley's deaths, as opposed to the original's tight focus on revenge against those who directly perpetrated the act. Part of the story was lost in translation, with Eric condemning himself to eternal damnation for the most unlikable, least deserving woman this side of the river Styx. I'm not sure why this singer, FKA Twigs, was cast in this role, but it sure doesn't help the movie any. Brandon Lee's legacy deserves so much better.
One.
The power of one. The power of two. The power of many.
And here we are. At the top of the trash heap sits the Acolyte, a Star Wars spin-off that made us long for the days of Ewoks and trade negotiations. Amandla Stenberg's performance as the lead was painfully inconsistent, ranging from melodramatic to completely disengaged. Too much was asked of this inexperienced actress, having to shoulder the weight of two different characters who are simultaneously twins but have radically different personalities. In short, she didn't pull it off. Not even close.
I can't believe my sister's Jedi scum.
And the fact that she wasn't exactly humble about it didn't do the show any favors, going so far as to make a diss track against all the so-called haters who said she couldn't act.
Trevor asked what I want the people to know. I said, white people cry, what's the goal?
The writing, full of cringeworthy attempts at profundity, demonstrated a complete misunderstanding of what makes Star Wars tick. It's like the writers Googled Star Wars lore and just went from there.
How much of that Star Wars fan fiction that she used to write do you think ended up in the show?
All of it, for sure.
Lesbian space witches as a stand-in for Leslie Headland and her queer agenda were just icing on the cake. The Force was not strong with this one. It was so weak, in fact, that Season 2 was promptly cancelled after Season 1 finished airing. This disaster of a show was so bad that even Lucasfilm couldn't turn a blind eye. And that's saying something. And there you have it, folks. The worst of the worst from 2024. Let me know in the comments which of these you suffered through, and if I missed any other stinkers. As always, thanks for watching, and here's to a better 2025.